So in this final video, we're going to talk a bit about climate. Climate is basically just a composite, larger gathering of weather patterns that occur over a long span of time. So not just within a few years, but within hundreds of years. Climate's basically the determining factor in what types of animals and plants can exist in a particular location, what types of homes are built, and how people live. And the climate also influences the shape of the landscape and the types of soil that are there, as well as what you can grow in a general area. So there are two primary factors when it comes to determining the climate of a particular region, which is the amount of solar energy that is available to that particular region, as well as the number of daylight hours. So how long that particular region is in the sun. Both of these things are generally related to the tilt of the Earth's axis, the way the Earth is tilted as it rotates. Regions near the equator aren't tilted away from the sun really at all, so they receive more incoming solar energy. Regions near the poles are tilted farther away from the sun, and so they receive less energy overall. And so because of this, what you find is that at low latitudes between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn, so 23.5 degrees north and south latitude, you find that these regions have high levels of solar energy, and the yearly variation between their temperatures is generally small. You have the same types of weather and the same types of climate patterns because the amount of sunlight doesn't really change. At the middle latitudes, below 66.5 degrees north and south latitude, you find that these regions receive higher amounts of solar energy in one part of the year and lower amounts in other parts of the year, depending on when it is tilted towards or away the sun. In general, the overall temperatures will drop much lower than in the low latitude areas near the equator. So it's colder in this region. At the high latitudes near the poles, you find that you get a maximum amount of solar energy in one part of the year and a minimum amount in the other part of the year. Above 66.5 degrees north latitude and below 66.5 south latitude, the sun is above the horizon for 6 months out of the year, and it is below the horizon for 6 months out of the year. So you basically have 6 months of day and 6 months of nighttime. Just to be clear, this does not mean that the sun moves one time through the sky over the course of 6 months. What it means is that the sun will move and lower, but never quite go below the horizon, and then rise again. And it'll move below the horizon as it goes to nighttime, and for that 6 months it'll never quite move above the horizon. So because of the tilt of the Earth and the air patterns of the Earth, there are climate zones that are formed. There's a tropical climate zone that's near the equator, which receives the most solar radiation. This is the hot area. This is where you find things like rainforests. You have the polar climate zone, which has the least amount of solar radiation, so this is the cold regions near the poles. And you have daylight and darkness for 6 months. And you have the temperate climate zone, which is in between. And here in that temperate climate zone, rainfall patterns, they shift seasonally. They're very different all throughout the year. So in terms of regions, there's 4 major factors that influence the climate in a particular region. It's altitude. Higher altitude regions emit more energy into space. If there are mountains nearby, regions that are on upwind slopes of mountains will receive more precipitation. Downwind slopes will receive less because the mountain blocks it. If there are large bodies of water nearby, the high specific heat moderates the temperatures of these particular regions. And ocean currents can also bring warmer water to colder regions, thus allowing to moderate the climate of those regions as well. The problem with describing climates is there are no real sharp boundaries between these particular regions, and no two places are really exactly the same. In North America, there are many different types of climate zones. Primary zones include marine climates, which are near the ocean and influenced by air masses from the ocean, and continental climates, which are far from the ocean, and they're influenced by air masses from continental areas. We can also look at local climates, which are sometimes called microclimates, and these can be local enough that they're associated with a large city. For example, the idea of a heat dome effect, because buildings and pavement in cities emit solar radiation differently from natural vegetation. So you find that cities are generally warmer. Or these microclimates can be associated with something like a single tree and how the weather affects that one particular tree.